Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Science. What if I told you flowers are not just decorations, but some of the most strategically advanced organisms on Earth? They can manipulate insects. They can sense electricity. Some can heat their own bodies. Others can remember stress and pass it to the next generation. And without them, most of the food you eat wouldn't exist. Tonight, we're going to look at flowers differently, not as something beautiful, but as something quietly intelligent. Let's start at the beginning. When the first dinosaurs walked on Earth, flowers did not exist. The planet looked very different. Forests were filled with ferns, mosses, and tall cone-bearing trees. These plants were green, but they did not produce colorful blooms. For millions of years, dinosaurs lived in a world without roses, lilies, or grass fields. That may sound surprising because today flowers are almost everywhere. So what changed? Flowers appeared much later, near the end of the dinosaur age. When they arrived, they slowly began to reshape life on land. They offered new food sources, new shelter, and new ways for plants to reproduce. Insects began to change. Animals began to depend on seeds and fruits. The arrival of flowers did not just add color to Earth. It changed ecosystems, food chains, and survival patterns. Imagine a world without fruit, without many vegetables, without fields of wheat. That was the world before flowers evolved. Around 140 million years ago, the first flowering plants appeared. Scientists call them angiosperms. At first, they were simple and not very showy, but something unusual happened. They began to spread quickly across the planet. In a short geological time, they diversified into many forms. Some stayed small and low to the ground. Others grew into trees. Why did they spread so fast? Because flowers had a new advantage. They used animals to move pollen from one plant to another. This made reproduction more efficient. Instead of relying only on wind, they recruited insects and other creatures. That partnership helped them adapt to different climates and regions. Soon, flowering plants began replacing many older plant types. Forests changed. Landscapes changed. Even the air changed as plant life expanded. When angiosperms rose, they did not slowly fade into the background. They reshaped the green world we now recognize. Before flowers existed, plant reproduction worked very differently. Many plants used spores. Spores are tiny cells that spread through air or water. Ferns still reproduce this way today. Other plants, like conifers, produced exposed seeds in cones. Pine trees are a common example. These seeds were not protected inside fruit. They relied mostly on wind to carry pollen. This system worked, but it was not very targeted. Wind spreads pollen everywhere, even where it is not needed. That means a lot of energy is wasted. Plants had little control over where their genetic material traveled. There was no reward system, no nectar, no attraction. It was a simple method, but not very precise. So imagine the change when plants developed a way to guide pollen using animals. Instead of hoping for chance, they began using strategy. That shift would transform plant life in ways early forests never experienced. Flowers evolved for one main reason, reproduction. But they did not solve this problem alone. They formed partnerships with animals. Bright petals, sweet scents, and nectar were not random features. They were tools. Flowers began attracting insects, birds, and even small mammals. When these animals visited for food, they carried pollen to other flowers. This made reproduction more accurate and more successful. It became a mutual exchange. The animal received nectar or pollen as food. The plant received help moving its genetic material. This was not beauty for decoration. It was cooperation shaped by evolution. Over time, flowers and pollinators influenced each other's development. Bees developed better vision. Flowers developed clearer signals. It became a system built on trust and reward. That partnership still supports most plant life today. Without this collaboration, many species, including humans, would live in a very different world. When flowers began spreading across the planet, insects changed with them. Before flowers, many insects fed on leaves, wood, or decaying matter. But flowers offered something new, nectar and rich pollen. This was a steady food source, full of energy. Insects that could find flowers had an advantage. Over time, new insect species appeared. Bees, butterflies, and many beetles evolved special body parts to collect pollen. Some developed longer tongues to reach deep nectar. Others grew hairs that trapped pollen grains. This led to what scientists call an evolutionary explosion. In simple words, insect diversity increased very fast. As flowers multiplied, insects multiplied too. It became a cycle. More flowers meant more food. More insects meant better pollination. This partnership pushed both groups to evolve quickly. If flowers had never appeared, many insects alive today would not exist. The buzzing world around us began with that change. Some scientists believe flowers did more than change insects. They may have reshaped the entire food chain. Think about how many animals eat fruits, seeds, or plants that come from flowers. Birds eat berries. Monkeys eat fruit. Humans eat grains, vegetables, and nuts. All of these begin with flowering plants. When flowers spread, they created new food sources at the base of ecosystems. Herbivores had more to eat. Carnivores had more prey. This caused ripple effects through forests and grasslands. Even soil life changed because fallen flowers and fruits added nutrients. Flowers did not just sit quietly in fields. They became a foundation for modern ecosystems. Without them, food webs would look very different. Many animals might never have evolved. The next time you see a fruit tree, consider this. Its flowers once helped rebuild life on Earth. The earliest flowers were not large and bright like modern roses or sunflowers. Scientists believe they were small, simple, and greenish. They likely blended in with leaves. At that time, there was no strong need for bold colors. Early pollinators were not highly specialized. Wind still played a major role in moving pollen, so flowers did not invest much energy in big petals. Their structure was basic. They focused mainly on reproduction, not attraction. Over millions of years, as insects became more important, flowers began to change. But in the beginning, they were modest and quiet. This tells us something important. Beauty came later. At first, flowers were practical structures solving a survival problem. Their transformation into colorful shapes happened slowly. That shift would depend on another major change in nature, something that insects were developing at the same time. Color in flowers did not appear randomly. It evolved after insects developed color vision. Early insects likely saw limited shades. As their eyes improved, they could detect different wavelengths of light. Some insects began seeing ultraviolet patterns that humans cannot see. Flowers responded to this ability. Plants that produced noticeable colors attracted more pollinators. Those plants reproduced more successfully. Over time, bright petals became common. Yellow, blue, red, and purple shades spread through plant populations. Some flowers even developed patterns that act like landing guides for bees. These patterns point directly to nectar. It became a visual communication system. Insects improved their sight. Flowers improved their signals. This back and forth process shaped the colorful landscapes we see today. So when you notice a bright flower in a field, remember this. Its color is not just for beauty. It is a message designed for specific eyes. Many flowers respond to light in ways humans cannot see. Our eyes detect certain colors like red, blue, and green. But many insects can see ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet is invisible to us, yet it is present in sunlight. Flowers reflect ultraviolet patterns on their petals. To human eyes, a petal may look plain yellow, but under ultraviolet light, it can show bold patterns. These patterns guide insects toward nectar. This means flowers are designed for a different audience. Their true appearance is hidden from us. Scientists use special cameras to reveal these markings. When we look at those images, flowers seem to have secret designs. Why would plants evolve this feature? Because insects with better vision could find food faster. Flowers that displayed clear ultraviolet signals were visited more often. This improved pollination success. So the flower you see is only part of the picture. There is another version, glowing with signals made for insect eyes. To a bee, a flower does not look like a smooth circle of color. It often appears to have lines pointing inward. These lines are called nectar guides. They act like landing stripes on a runway. When a bee approaches, the stripes direct it to the center. This is where nectar and pollen are located. The bee does not waste time searching randomly. It follows the visual signals. This benefits both the bee and the flower. The bee saves energy. The flower increases the chance of pollen transfer. Some guides are visible to humans, but many appear only in ultraviolet light. This makes the system even more precise. Imagine if grocery stores had arrows that only certain shoppers could see. That is how specific this guidance can be. Flowers are not passive objects. They are structured to guide behavior. And bees respond almost automatically to those signals. A flower may look like decoration, but it is actually the reproductive organ of a plant. Its main job is to produce seeds. Inside every flower are structures that handle reproduction. The stamen produces pollen. The pistil receives pollen and contains ovules. When pollen reaches the ovule, fertilization can happen. This leads to seed formation. Seeds can grow into new plants. Without flowers, many plants could not reproduce efficiently. The bright colors and soft petals are secondary features. The real function is biological. Think of a flower as a factory for the next generation. Every part has a purpose. The timing of bloom, the release of pollen, and the production of nectar are carefully controlled. So when you see a flower in a garden, it is not simply sitting there. It is actively working to ensure survival of its species. Petals may seem delicate, but they serve a clear function. Their main purpose is to attract pollinators. Petals use color, shape, and sometimes texture to stand out. In a green environment, bright petals are easy to notice. This draws insects, birds, and other animals. Some petals reflect ultraviolet light. Others produce subtle heat. The size and shape can also influence which pollinators visit. Long, narrow petals may attract butterflies. Tube-shaped petals may suit hummingbirds. Petals are like advertisement signs. They signal that nectar is available. Once pollinators arrive, the plant gains a chance at reproduction. Without petals, many flowers would be ignored. Plants that developed attractive petals had higher success rates. Over time, this trait became common. So petals are not random decorations. They are tools shaped by evolution to capture attention and guide interaction. The scent of a flower is not made for human enjoyment. It is a chemical signal. Flowers release tiny molecules into the air. These molecules travel and reach the sensory organs of insects. Each scent carries information. It can signal that nectar is ready. It can signal the type of pollinator needed. Some scents are sweet. Others smell like fruit, spice, or even decay. The smell depends on the target visitor. Bees prefer certain chemical blends. Flies prefer others. The scent can also change during the day. A flower may smell stronger in the morning if that is when its pollinators are active. This is not random. It is controlled by the plant's biology. So when you notice a pleasant floral smell, remember this. You are detecting a communication system. That fragrance is not perfume. It is a precise chemical message designed to guide behavior. Some flowers take scent production even further. They can raise their own temperature. This may sound surprising, but it is true. Certain species generate heat inside their tissues. The heat helps spread scent molecules into the air more quickly. Warm air carries smell farther than cool air. This makes the flower easier to locate. In some cases, the heat also mimics the warmth of decaying material. This attracts insects like beetles or flies. The energy required to produce heat is high. So why would a plant spend that energy? Because stronger scent means more visitors. More visitors mean better chances of pollination. This strategy increases reproductive success. Scientists have measured temperature changes of several degrees above the surrounding air. So a flower may not feel warm to your touch, but at a biological level, it is adjusting its environment to improve communication. Certain flowers can regulate their temperature to protect pollen. Pollen is sensitive. If it becomes too cold, it may not function well. If it becomes too hot, it can be damaged. Some flowers adjust their structure to trap heat from sunlight. Bowl-shaped petals can focus light toward the center. This creates a warmer space inside the flower. In cold climates, this small increase in temperature can make a big difference. Pollinators may also prefer warmer flowers, especially in early spring. The warmth provides comfort and energy savings. So the flower gains two benefits. It protects its pollen, and it attracts more visitors. This shows that flowers respond to their environment actively. They are not passive objects in the wind. They adjust shape and position to manage heat. That control helps ensure successful reproduction in changing conditions. Flowers produce nectar as a reward. Nectar is a sweet liquid rich in sugars. It is stored inside special glands. When insects visit to drink nectar, they often brush against pollen. This pollen sticks to their bodies. When they move to another flower, some pollen transfers. This completes pollination. Nectar works like payment for a service. The insect receives energy. The plant receives genetic transfer. The amount of nectar can vary. Some flowers produce small amounts to encourage movement between plants. Others produce more to attract larger pollinators. The sugar concentration can also change depending on the visitor. This exchange system has existed for millions of years. It is efficient and balanced. Without nectar rewards, many pollinators would ignore flowers. And without pollinators, many plants could not reproduce successfully. So nectar is not just sweetness. It is part of a long-term biological partnership. Pollen may look like fine yellow dust, but it is not simple powder. It carries the male genetic material of a plant. In biological terms, pollen works more like sperm than like dust. Each grain contains cells that are designed to reach an ovule. When pollen lands on the correct part of a flower, it begins to grow a tiny tube. This tube travels down into the plant tissue. Through this tube, genetic material moves toward the ovule. That process leads to fertilization. Dust cannot do that. Dust is lifeless. Pollen is alive and active. It responds to chemical signals inside the flower. It knows where to grow and how to deliver its cells. So when you see pollen on your clothes or on a bee's legs, remember this. Each grain carries life. It holds instructions for building the next generation of that plant. Some flowers contain both male and female parts at the same time. This means they can produce pollen and receive pollen within the same bloom. The male part is called the stamen. The female part is called the pistil. Having both parts may seem simple, but it gives the plant flexibility. If pollinators are scarce, the flower can sometimes fertilize itself. This ensures survival when conditions are difficult. However, many of these flowers still prefer pollen from another plant. Cross-pollination creates stronger genetic diversity. Diversity helps plants adapt to disease and climate change. So being both male and female is not laziness. It is a strategy. The plant keeps options open. It can accept pollen from others or use its own if needed. This balance improves survival chances. Nature often favors systems that allow backup plans. Other flowers separate male and female parts to avoid self-pollination. Some plants grow male and female flowers on different parts of the same plant. Others grow male and female flowers on completely separate plants. This forces pollen to travel between individuals. Why would a plant make reproduction harder? Because genetic mixing creates stronger offspring. When pollen comes from another plant, the resulting seeds carry new combinations of traits. This can increase resistance to pests and environmental stress. Preventing self-pollination reduces the risk of weak or less adaptable offspring. It encourages diversity within the population. So separation is not an accident. It is a protective system. By forcing interaction between plants, nature increases long-term stability. The process may seem more complex, but it leads to healthier plant communities over time. A single grain of pollen is enough to fertilize one ovule. Inside a flower, there may be many ovules waiting, but each successful seed usually begins with one pollen grain. After landing on the pistil, the pollen grain grows a tube. This tube carries genetic material directly to the ovule. Once fertilization happens, the ovule can develop into a seed. That seed may later grow into a full plant. It is surprising to think that something so small holds such power. A tiny grain, almost invisible, can create a tree or a field of crops. Not all pollen grains succeed. Many are lost in wind or fall in the wrong place, but only one is needed for each ovule. This efficiency shows how precise the system is. From one small particle, an entire life cycle can begin. Flowers are not silent, passive organisms. They can communicate in ways humans cannot see or hear. One surprising method is through electrical signals. Tiny differences in charge occur on their petals and reproductive organs. These electric signals can influence insects that approach. The signals help guide pollinators to the nectar and pollen. When an insect lands, it can detect these subtle cues. This system increases the efficiency of pollination. Flowers may seem still, but at a microscopic level, there is activity happening constantly. The electrical communication works alongside visual signals, scents, and colors. It is part of a sophisticated system that has evolved over millions of years. By using multiple methods, flowers increase their chances of reproduction. These electrical signals may seem small, but they are powerful. Insects respond naturally without conscious thought to these cues. The flower essentially sends a silent message, saying, "Here is food. Come closer." This invisible communication is an incredible example of nature's precision. Bees, among other insects, can detect the electric field surrounding a flower. Their bodies are sensitive to very small charges. When a bee flies near a flower, it can sense whether the flower has been recently visited. This is because the flower's electric charge temporarily changes after each visit. By detecting these differences, bees avoid wasting time on flowers that have already been emptied of nectar. This ability makes them more efficient foragers. It also benefits the flower, because pollen is transferred to flowers that still need it. The electric field works like a natural signpost. It guides insects without words, color, or smell. Bees respond instinctively to these cues, following the invisible signals. This is another way flowers communicate, beyond what humans can perceive. It shows that flowers are actively managing their visitors. They are not passive structures. Instead, they interact with their environment in subtle but important ways, shaping behavior to ensure survival. After a bee visits a flower, the flower's electric charge changes temporarily. This is a direct result of contact. The bee removes some pollen and leaves tiny electrical traces behind. These changes can last for minutes or even hours, depending on the species. During this time, the flower signals to other pollinators that it has been visited. Bees and other insects are able to detect this signal and often move on to other flowers. This prevents repeated visits to the same flower, which would waste energy for both the plant and the insect. The process shows that flowers are aware of recent activity in a physical sense. They record interactions in subtle ways. This temporary change is one more tool to control pollination. By adjusting how they communicate, flowers make sure that their genetic material spreads efficiently. It is a quiet, invisible strategy that has developed over millions of years. Flowers release different scents depending on the time of day. They do not emit a constant fragrance. Instead, they adjust chemicals according to when their pollinators are most active. Morning flowers may produce certain scents to attract bees. Night-blooming flowers release stronger odors to lure moths or bats. This timing maximizes the chances that visitors will arrive when pollen is ready. Scent production is often linked to environmental cues such as light, temperature, and humidity. The composition of the scent can also change during the day. Some molecules are only released under specific conditions. By adjusting scent in this way, flowers communicate the availability of rewards in real time. Pollinators learn to recognize these signals, returning to flowers when nectar is most abundant. The system is dynamic and highly efficient. Flowers are not static. They actively manage chemical signals to guide behavior and improve reproduction success. Some flowers produce sounds that humans cannot hear. These sounds are at ultrasonic frequencies, far beyond our range of hearing. While we cannot detect them, insects like bees can sense vibrations in this range. The flowers generate these sounds through tiny movements of their petals or internal structures. Scientists believe that these ultrasonic signals help guide pollinators to the right spot. They may also indicate that nectar is available. In effect, the flower is creating a sound map for insects. This adds another layer to the way flowers communicate. It works alongside colors, scents, and electric signals. The use of sound shows that flowers have multiple ways to interact with the world. Each signal increases the chance that pollination will succeed. It is a hidden system, invisible to humans, but extremely effective. The quiet ultrasonic calls of flowers are part of a complex network that shapes how insects move and behave. Plants can detect vibrations caused by chewing insects. If a caterpillar or beetle begins eating leaves or petals, the plant can sense the movement. This is not feeling in the way humans feel, but a response to mechanical vibrations. When the plant detects chewing, it can trigger defensive mechanisms. For example, it may produce chemicals that taste bad or slow growth in the area being eaten. Some flowers can even alter nectar or scent to discourage herbivores. Detecting vibrations allows the plant to respond quickly, minimizing damage. This is remarkable because it shows that plants are actively monitoring their environment. They are aware, in a biological sense, of what is happening around them. By sensing chewing insects, flowers can protect themselves and improve survival. This system shows that flowers are not passive. They constantly process information and adjust behavior, ensuring their chances to reproduce remain high. Certain flowers increase nectar production when pollinators are nearby. This is a dynamic response to the presence of visitors. When an insect approaches, chemical and mechanical cues trigger the flower to produce more nectar. The flower essentially says, "Come closer, the reward is ready." This encourages pollinators to stay longer and visit other flowers on the same plant. The result is more effective pollen transfer. Flowers can adjust the sugar content as well, making nectar more appealing. This system conserves energy because the flower produces extra nectar only when there is a high chance it will be collected. If no pollinators are present, the flower does not waste resources. This shows flowers have a form of real-time interaction with their environment. They respond to the activity around them. Nectar production is not fixed. It is flexible, controlled, and strategic. It is another way flowers ensure successful reproduction. Some flowers release chemicals that warn neighboring plants. When a flower is attacked by insects, it can emit volatile compounds into the air. Nearby plants detect these chemicals and prepare defenses. For example, they may produce bitter substances or toughen leaves to reduce damage. This communication allows groups of plants to respond collectively, even if each plant is rooted and cannot move. The warning system is like a neighborhood alert. Plants that receive the chemical signals increase their chances of survival. This type of communication shows that flowers are not isolated. They interact with each other in complex ways. The system is invisible but highly effective. By sharing information, plants can adapt to threats and improve their reproductive success. Flowers operate in a network, sensing and reacting to changes in their surroundings. This hidden chemical messaging helps entire plant communities survive and thrive. Flowers are capable of something surprising. They can remember stress from drought. When a plant experiences a period of low water, it undergoes biological changes. The leaves, stems, and flowers adjust their growth, metabolism, and chemical production to survive. These changes are not temporary in every sense. Some of the adjustments are stored at a cellular level. When the plant faces future drought, it responds more efficiently. This memory is not like human memory, but it is an ability to retain information about past conditions. It can influence how the plant manages water, produces flowers, or develops seeds. Scientists have observed that this memory can last for weeks or even months. It is a survival strategy shaped by evolution. By remembering stress, flowers improve their chances of reproducing even in challenging environments. In a sense, the plant learns from experience and adjusts behavior to protect its next generation. That memory can even influence how the next generation grows. Seeds produced by stressed plants sometimes inherit chemical or structural changes. These changes prepare seedlings for similar conditions. For example, offspring may grow smaller leaves to reduce water loss. Root systems may develop faster or deeper to access moisture. The timing of flowering can also adjust based on parent experience. This inherited stress response gives new plants a better chance to survive in environments that are dry or harsh. It is a natural form of adaptation. Scientists call this epigenetic inheritance, meaning the environment affects how genes are expressed. The process shows that flowers are more than passive organisms. They carry information across generations. Stress experienced by one plant can shape the survival strategies of the next. In this way, flowers are connected to the past and future of their species, quietly preparing for challenges yet to come. Some flowers bloom only once in their lifetime. These are called monocarpic plants. After producing flowers, seeds, and fruits, the plant usually dies. This strategy may seem extreme, but it has advantages. By concentrating all energy into a single flowering event, the plant can produce more seeds at once. This increases the likelihood that some will survive and grow. These plants often live for several years before flowering, storing energy in roots, stems, or leaves. When the right conditions occur, they invest everything into reproduction. Bamboo and agave are well-known examples. The timing of flowering is precise and often triggered by environmental cues like temperature, light, or rainfall. Blooming only once is a way to maximize reproductive success in challenging or unpredictable environments. It is a dramatic strategy, showing that flowers can follow different survival plans. This one-time bloom is a powerful example of how plants prioritize species survival over individual longevity. The corpse flower is one of the most unusual flowering plants. Its bloom is enormous, and it produces a very strong odor. The smell is similar to rotting flesh. This is not accidental. The scent attracts specific pollinators like carrion beetles and flies. These insects are naturally drawn to decaying material. By mimicking a rotting body, the flower ensures that pollinators visit. The corpse flower can also heat itself, amplifying the odor and helping it spread farther. The bloom may last only a few days, but it is highly effective. During this time, the flower produces pollen and allows pollinators to transfer it. Its strategy may seem strange to humans, but it works perfectly in nature. The corpse flower demonstrates how flowers can develop extreme adaptations to ensure reproduction. Its combination of size, smell, and heat makes it one of the most unique plants on Earth. It shows that survival strategies in flowers can be very creative and unexpected. Night-blooming flowers have a unique strategy compared to daytime flowers. Since they open after sunset, their colors are less important. Most nocturnal pollinators, like moths or bats, cannot see bright colors clearly. Instead, these flowers rely heavily on scent. They produce strong, often sweet or musky aromas that travel long distances in the cool night air. The scents guide pollinators to the flower's center, where nectar and pollen are located. Timing is crucial. Some flowers release the strongest scent only during the hours when their specific pollinators are active. This ensures energy is not wasted producing fragrance at the wrong time. Night-blooming flowers also tend to be pale or white, which reflects any available moonlight and helps visibility. By relying on smell over color, these flowers effectively communicate with their intended visitors. Their strategy highlights that flowers use multiple senses, adapting carefully to the abilities and habits of the creatures that help them reproduce. Certain orchids use an unusual strategy to attract pollinators. They mimic female insects. The flower's shape, color, and even scent imitate a female of a specific species. Male insects are tricked into attempting to mate with the flower, a behavior called pseudocopulation. During this process, pollen attaches to the insect's body. When the insect moves to another flower, pollination occurs. This system is precise because it targets a specific species, ensuring that pollen is transferred efficiently. Orchids may produce very little nectar because they rely mostly on this trick to attract pollinators. The mimicry can be so convincing that male insects ignore actual females for a period of time. This strategy shows how evolution can create highly specialized interactions. Flowers are not passive in this system. They actively manipulate behavior to achieve reproduction. The orchid's deceptive approach is a striking example of how creativity appears in nature, with flowers using both shape and scent to communicate silently. Some flowers have developed the ability to trap insects temporarily. This may sound harsh, but it is a carefully controlled mechanism. The trap often consists of sticky surfaces, slippery petals, or enclosed structures that guide the insect inward. Once inside, the insect searches for nectar or pollen, and in the process, comes into contact with the flower's reproductive structures. The flower then releases the insect after a short time, allowing it to continue visiting other flowers. This ensures pollen transfer while minimizing risk to the plant. Trapping is precise. Insects are not harmed, only guided. The method increases efficiency, particularly for species with specialized pollinators. Some tropical flowers use this strategy to control which insects carry their pollen. Others use temporary confinement to prevent nectar theft. These flowers demonstrate that reproduction in plants is not passive. They actively manage the behavior of visitors, sometimes even controlling movement, to ensure that pollination occurs successfully and efficiently. A few flowers have the ability to move slightly to track sunlight. This movement is usually slow and subtle, often taking minutes or hours. By adjusting their orientation, petals or leaves maximize exposure to sunlight. This helps the plant with photosynthesis, producing more energy. In some species, tracking sunlight also positions the reproductive organs optimally for pollinators. For example, pollen or nectar may face the direction where insects are most likely to arrive. This movement is controlled by specialized cells in stems and petals, which expand or contract depending on light intensity. Tracking sunlight can also protect delicate tissues from overheating or underexposure. Flowers that move in this way show an impressive level of environmental awareness. They adjust their position not randomly, but to improve energy use, reproduction, and survival. This demonstrates that plants are active participants in their environment. Even though they appear still, they respond to light, visitors, and surroundings in precise and purposeful ways. Some flowers do not follow the usual pattern of opening and closing with sunlight. Instead, they respond to humidity in the air. When moisture levels are high, petals may open wide to expose pollen and nectar. When humidity drops, the petals close to protect delicate reproductive parts. This adaptation helps flowers survive in dry or variable climates. By responding to moisture, they prevent pollen from drying out or being damaged. It also helps conserve water within the flower itself. Pollinators may notice this change, adjusting their visiting times to when flowers are open. This shows that flowers monitor more than just light. They sense their immediate environment and react to optimize survival. The opening and closing is a form of communication and protection combined. It allows the plant to manage risks while still attracting pollinators. Humidity-based movements are subtle but vital strategies in the daily life of many species. Some flowers bloom entirely underground, hidden from view. These flowers often grow in soil or under leaf litter, producing seeds without ever showing their petals above the surface. They rely on insects or small animals that can access their blooms below ground. This strategy can protect flowers from extreme weather or predators. Underground flowering also allows plants to exploit habitats where above-ground conditions are harsh. Because they are hidden, their reproductive parts are often highly specialized. Some even produce strong scents to attract pollinators in enclosed spaces. These plants challenge the common idea that flowers are always visible, colorful, or fragrant above ground. Their success shows that flowers can adapt to very different environments. Blooming underground ensures survival in competitive or risky habitats. It also highlights the creativity of evolution, where reproductive strategies are not limited by visibility. Even out of sight, these flowers play a crucial role in their ecosystems and reproduce efficiently. The world's smallest flowering plant is smaller than a grain of rice. Known as the watermeal or wolffia species, it floats on the surface of calm waters. Each individual plant is tiny, sometimes just half a millimeter long, yet it produces flowers, seeds, and reproduces successfully. Despite its size, it is fully functional as a flowering plant. It can multiply rapidly, forming mats on ponds or lakes. Small size gives it an advantage, allowing it to float easily, avoid predators, and reproduce quickly. Its flowers are so tiny that they are almost invisible to the naked eye, yet they carry all the reproductive structures needed for survival. This demonstrates that size does not limit a plant's ability to reproduce. Even the smallest flowering plants participate in the ecosystem, providing food and habitat for microorganisms and small animals. It is remarkable how nature achieves full function in such a minuscule form. The largest flower in the world can weigh over 10 kilograms and grow more than 1 meter across. Known as Rafflesia arnoldii, this flower is found in tropical rainforests. Its enormous size and strong odor attract carrion-feeding insects for pollination. The smell resembles rotting meat, ensuring that beetles and flies visit the bloom and transfer pollen. Despite its size, the flower has no visible stem or leaves and relies on a host plant for nutrients. Producing such a massive bloom requires immense energy and precise timing. It may only bloom for a few days, but during that time, it is highly effective at reproduction. The contrast between the smallest and largest flowering plants shows the incredible diversity in size, form, and strategy. Flowers adapt to their environment in ways both tiny and enormous, demonstrating that reproductive success can take many extraordinary forms. Flowers have inspired humans in ways beyond beauty. One of the most fascinating ideas is the concept of a floral clock. Scientists and gardeners noticed that different flowers open and close at predictable times of day. By observing which flowers were open at morning, noon, or evening, people could estimate the time without clocks or watches. This idea was first formalized by Carl Linnaeus, a Swedish botanist, in the 18th century. He mapped flowers in a garden according to the time they opened. This showed a natural rhythm, almost like a living timepiece. Flowers respond to sunlight, temperature, and internal biological cycles to follow these patterns. The concept of floral clocks highlighted that plants are sensitive to the environment and have precise timing mechanisms. It also connected humans to natural cycles, showing how observation of flowers could provide practical knowledge. The floral clock is a reminder that even simple actions of plants, like opening petals, can inspire scientific innovation and insight into nature's order. Some flowers open at very specific times of the day, almost like they are following a strict schedule. Morning glories, for example, usually open in the early hours, while certain evening primroses bloom only after sunset. These patterns are consistent, day after day, and are triggered by environmental cues like sunlight, temperature, and humidity. By opening at a precise time, the flower increases the chances that its preferred pollinators will visit. Insects and birds often have their own schedules, and flowers coordinate with these rhythms. Timing also protects flowers from harsh conditions, like midday heat or heavy rain, which can damage delicate petals. Some species even close temporarily during unfavorable weather, reopening later. This level of precision shows that flowers are actively managing their reproductive success. They are not passive structures, but organisms with internal clocks. Observing these patterns teaches humans about circadian rhythms and the connection between plants and their environment. Cherry blossoms are famous for their beauty, but their bloom is fleeting. These flowers usually last for only about 1 week before petals begin to fall. The brief blooming period is due to both environmental factors and the plant's natural life cycle. Temperature, wind, and rainfall can affect how long the flowers remain. The short bloom creates a spectacular display, but it is also a reminder of the transient nature of life. During this week, pollination occurs, seeds are fertilized, and the tree prepares for fruit production or leaf growth. The timing is critical because the flowers must attract pollinators in a very short window. Cultural practices, like hanami in Japan, celebrate the fleeting beauty of cherry blossoms, showing how humans recognize and honor this natural rhythm. The ephemeral nature of these blooms demonstrates that flowers operate on precise schedules, and that even brief appearances can have significant ecological and cultural impact. Certain desert flowers have an even more dramatic strategy. They can bloom within hours after rainfall, taking advantage of rare moisture in arid environments. In deserts, water is limited, and the opportunity for reproduction is brief. These flowers remain dormant in the soil during dry periods, sometimes for months or years. When rain arrives, signals trigger rapid germination and flowering. Some species can grow, bloom, and produce seeds in just a few days. This ensures that reproduction happens before the water disappears. The flowers often produce bright colors and strong scents to attract the few pollinators available. Their speed is remarkable and demonstrates extreme adaptation. Desert blooms are temporary but highly effective, showing that flowers can time their life cycles to environmental conditions. Even in harsh climates, plants have evolved precise strategies to reproduce successfully. These rapid responses highlight the resilience and intelligence built into flowering plants. Seeds from flowers have an incredible ability to remain dormant for long periods, sometimes even centuries. Dormancy is a survival strategy that allows plants to wait for ideal conditions before germinating. The seed contains all the necessary genetic material, nutrients, and protective coatings to survive harsh environments. Some seeds can resist extreme temperatures, drought, and lack of sunlight, remaining viable until conditions improve. This ensures that plants can reproduce even after long periods of unfavorable weather or environmental change. Dormant seeds can lie buried in soil, hidden from predators, and undisturbed for decades or more. When rain arrives, or the temperature becomes favorable, the seed senses the change and begins germination. This ability allows plant species to survive through dramatic shifts in climate or human activity. Dormancy shows that flowers have long-term strategies built into their life cycles. Even when it seems that a species has disappeared, its seeds may wait silently, ready to sprout and continue the lineage when the time is right. A remarkable example of seed longevity occurred with a 2,000-year-old date seed. Archaeologists discovered it in an ancient site and decided to attempt germination. Despite being buried for 2 millennia, the seed successfully sprouted into a healthy date palm. This astonishing event demonstrates the extraordinary durability of some seeds. Inside the seed, protective mechanisms preserve the embryo, keeping it alive through centuries of dormancy. The ability to survive for such long periods ensures that a species can persist even after extreme conditions or human disruptions. This also shows that plant life has resilience far beyond what we usually expect. Scientists study these seeds to understand longevity, genetics, and survival mechanisms. It is a reminder that flowers and their seeds are not just temporary decorations in nature. They are living systems designed to endure time and challenges, ensuring the survival of life across generations, sometimes over thousands of years. Tulips, although simple flowers, once caused a major economic phenomenon in Europe. During the 17th century in the Netherlands, people became obsessed with collecting rare tulip bulbs. Prices for certain varieties rose to extremely high levels, far beyond their actual production cost. This period became known as tulip mania, considered one of the first economic bubbles in history. People bought and sold tulip bulbs for profit, often speculating without even planting them. Some bulbs were worth more than houses. The craze eventually collapsed, leading to financial losses for many. The story shows how flowers can influence human culture, economics, and behavior in unexpected ways. Tulips were not just plants, they became symbols of status, wealth, and desire. This historic event highlights that flowers are not only biologically fascinating, but also socially powerful. Even simple blooms can trigger complex interactions between humans, culture, and economy, demonstrating the deep connection between plants and people. Flower blooming cycles are shifting due to climate change, and the effects are becoming noticeable worldwide. Rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns are causing flowers to bloom earlier or later than usual. In some regions, spring flowers appear weeks ahead of schedule, while others bloom irregularly. This shift affects the timing of pollinators, such as bees and butterflies, which may arrive too late or too early. Mismatches between flowers and pollinators can reduce reproduction success, impacting entire ecosystems. Changes in blooming cycles also affect agriculture, forests, and natural landscapes. Plants that rely on precise timing may struggle to reproduce effectively. Scientists monitor these changes to understand the impact on biodiversity and food webs. Climate change is not only altering weather patterns, but also reshaping the life cycles of plants. Flowers, which have evolved precise timing over millions of years, now face new challenges. These shifts reveal how sensitive life is to environmental changes and highlight the need for careful observation and adaptation. Some flowers now bloom weeks earlier than they did a century ago. Rising temperatures and changing climates have shifted the timing of flowering. Plants sense environmental cues such as warmth, daylight length, and moisture. When spring arrives earlier than usual, flowers respond by opening sooner. This shift can be seen in cities, forests, and gardens around the world. Early blooming affects the availability of nectar for pollinators, which may not yet be active. It also impacts fruit and seed production, as plants rely on coordinated timing for reproduction. Historical records, photographs, and botanical studies show clear trends of earlier flowering. Some species have advanced by several weeks compared to past centuries. This demonstrates that plants are sensitive indicators of environmental change. Early blooming is a direct response to subtle shifts in temperature and weather patterns. It shows that flowers adapt quickly, but rapid changes can also create challenges for ecosystems that depend on synchronized timing between plants and pollinators. Scientists track seasonal change by observing flowering times of plants. This method, called phenology, provides valuable data about climate and ecosystems. By recording when different flowers bloom, researchers can see trends over years or decades. Early or late flowering can indicate changes in temperature, rainfall, or even pollution levels. These observations help scientists understand how global warming affects plants, animals, and ecosystems. Data from botanical gardens, wildflower surveys, and citizen scientists contribute to large databases used for analysis. Flowering times also reveal shifts in pollinator activity, agricultural cycles, and migration patterns of insects and birds. By studying these trends, scientists can predict which species may be at risk. They can also plan conservation efforts and adapt farming practices. Flowers, in this way, act as natural clocks and environmental indicators. Their timing tells a story about the health of the planet. Observing blooms provides insight into both biological and climate changes over time. Bright colors in flowers are not meant to attract humans, but insects. Evolution shaped petals to communicate with pollinators that see color differently than we do. Bees, butterflies, and other insects have vision adapted to detect blues, purples, and ultraviolet patterns. Flowers use these colors to signal nectar and pollen availability. Contrasting patterns guide insects directly to the reproductive parts. Some colors invisible to humans are clearly visible to pollinators. By evolving vibrant and specific hues, flowers increase their chances of being visited and pollinated. Colors also help flowers stand out against leaves, soil, or other vegetation. This visual strategy ensures that insects notice them quickly and efficiently. Human enjoyment of flower colors is incidental. The real purpose is biological communication. Understanding this reveals that flowers are highly strategic, not decorative for us. The colors we admire are functional tools shaped over millions of years to guide behavior, support reproduction, and maintain survival of the species. Red flowers often attract birds instead of bees. Many bird species, such as hummingbirds, are drawn to red, orange, and pink shades. Unlike bees, birds have excellent vision for these colors but cannot see ultraviolet patterns. Flowers that rely on bird pollination often have tubular shapes that suit a bird's beak, making nectar accessible while transferring pollen effectively. These blooms typically produce large amounts of nectar to meet the high energy needs of birds. Bees, in contrast, are less attracted to red flowers and may ignore them. This specialization helps plants target specific pollinators, reducing wasted visits and increasing reproductive efficiency. By evolving traits that appeal to birds, plants can expand their pollination network beyond insects. It also shows that flower colors are not random, but are adaptations designed to communicate with particular species. The red petals you see are a signal, guiding the right visitor to help the plant reproduce successfully, creating a precise partnership between flower and pollinator. Wind-pollinated flowers have a very different strategy compared to those that rely on insects or birds. They are usually dull, small, and lack bright colors or patterns because they do not need to attract pollinators visually. These flowers also tend to be scentless, as fragrance would be unnecessary for their reproduction. Instead, they produce large amounts of pollen that can be carried by the wind over long distances. Their reproductive structures are often exposed or feathery, increasing the chance that pollen will land on the stigma of another flower. Wind pollination is less precise than insect pollination, but by producing more pollen, plants ensure that at least some grains reach a suitable flower. This strategy works well for grasses, trees, and many crop plants like corn or wheat. While they may seem plain or unremarkable to humans, wind-pollinated flowers are highly efficient. Their survival depends on quantity and exposure rather than attraction or beauty. Some flowers use deception to reproduce, disguising themselves as other species. They may mimic the appearance, shape, or scent of another flower to attract pollinators. This trickery can convince insects or birds to visit them, transferring pollen in the process. Certain orchids, for example, imitate the look and chemical signals of female insects, luring males into pollination attempts. Other flowers resemble neighboring species that are abundant or popular with pollinators, increasing visitation rates. This mimicry allows the plant to save energy by producing less nectar or fewer resources, relying instead on attraction through resemblance. It is a sophisticated evolutionary strategy that balances energy investment with reproductive success. By disguising themselves, flowers manipulate behavior and increase their chances of survival without offering the same rewards as other species. This shows that flowers are not passive, but actively interact with their environment in clever, strategic ways to ensure pollination and continuation of their species. Some flowers change color after pollination to signal that they are done. The transformation in petal color indicates to pollinators that the flower no longer offers nectar or pollen. This helps insects or birds avoid wasting energy on a flower that has already been fertilized. Color changes can range from subtle shifts to dramatic differences, depending on the species. The signaling system ensures that pollinators focus on flowers that still need reproduction, increasing the efficiency of pollen transfer. In addition, it prevents self-pollination in plants that require cross-pollination. By providing a clear visual cue, flowers guide the behavior of visitors in real time. This color change is controlled by chemical changes within petals triggered by fertilization. It demonstrates that flowers are actively managing interactions with pollinators. The system saves energy for both plants and pollinators while improving reproductive success. In this way, a simple shift in color carries a complex biological message. Certain flowers produce toxins to discourage animals from eating them. These chemicals can taste bitter, irritate the digestive system, or even be harmful in larger amounts. The toxins protect leaves, petals, nectar, or seeds from being consumed before the plant can reproduce. Some flowers also use these chemicals to prevent insects from destroying reproductive organs, ensuring pollen transfer is not interrupted. The production of toxins is often a carefully balanced strategy. While they deter harmful animals, they usually do not repel the intended pollinators. Many insects or birds can tolerate or ignore the toxins in nectar or pollen, allowing reproduction to continue. Toxins can also help plants survive in competitive ecosystems by discouraging herbivores from damaging them. This protective mechanism shows that flowers are not defenseless or passive. They actively manage their interactions with the environment and visitors. By combining attraction, signaling, and defense, flowers maximize survival and reproduction in a world full of challenges. Some flowers have evolved remarkable adaptations to survive wildfires. In regions where fires are frequent, plants face extreme heat that can destroy leaves, stems, and seeds. Certain flowers produce seeds with hard, heat-resistant coatings that protect them from flames. Others store energy in underground structures like bulbs or roots, which remain safe even if the above-ground parts burn. After a fire, these plants can quickly sprout and bloom, taking advantage of the cleared area with reduced competition and abundant sunlight. Fire-adapted flowers also often grow in nutrient-rich soil left behind by burned vegetation. These strategies show that flowers are not passive. They respond to extreme environmental challenges with resilience. Evolution has shaped specific traits that allow survival despite periodic destruction. By preparing for fire in advance, flowers ensure reproduction even in hazardous landscapes. This remarkable adaptation demonstrates how life can thrive under conditions that seem destructive, turning natural disasters into opportunities for growth and renewal. In some species, fire does more than just threaten survival. It actually triggers blooming. Certain flowers or seeds require exposure to heat, smoke, or chemical compounds produced by burning vegetation to start germination. This process ensures that flowering occurs in post-fire environments, where sunlight is abundant and competition is minimal. For example, some Australian and Californian plants only bloom after wildfires. Fire triggers chemical reactions that break seed dormancy or signal buds to open. Pollinators often follow these predictable post-fire blooms, ensuring that reproduction is efficient. By relying on fire, these flowers have turned a dangerous event into a survival advantage. They time reproduction with environmental conditions that favor seedling growth and survival. Fire-triggered blooming shows how flowers can adapt to extreme ecosystems in creative ways. Instead of merely resisting threats, they incorporate them into their life cycle. This strategy reflects an extraordinary level of environmental awareness and precise timing in plant evolution. Arctic flowers survive in one of the harshest environments on Earth by tracking the sun. The sun remains low in the sky for most of the growing season, and temperatures are extremely cold. These flowers can orient their petals, leaves, or entire stems to follow the sun's path across the sky. By doing so, they maximize sunlight absorption, which helps them stay warm and increases photosynthesis. Warmer petals attract pollinators by providing a small, comfortable microclimate. Insects are more active in sunny, warmer areas, so this positioning improves the chances of pollination. The ability to track the sun also protects delicate reproductive structures from frost. Arctic flowers accomplish this slow movement using specialized cells that expand or contract in response to light. These subtle adjustments show that plants actively manage their interaction with the environment. Sun tracking allows survival in extreme cold and ensures reproductive success despite short growing seasons and harsh conditions. Alpine flowers growing high in mountainous regions have another clever adaptation. They grow close to the ground. High-altitude environments are characterized by strong, persistent winds and cold temperatures. By staying low, flowers reduce exposure to wind, preventing damage to petals and stems. The ground itself provides some warmth, as sunlight heats the soil during the day. This proximity also helps conserve moisture, as evaporation is slower near the surface. Alpine flowers often form mats or clusters, which further protects individual blooms from wind and cold. Their compact structure increases survival in unpredictable mountain weather. Staying close to the ground allows flowers to use the environment strategically, making the most of limited warmth and shelter. Even though they appear small and fragile, these flowers are incredibly resilient. This adaptation highlights the precision with which plants respond to environmental pressures, balancing exposure, warmth, and reproductive needs to thrive in extreme conditions. The smell of flowers can have a powerful effect on the human body and mind. Scientific studies have shown that inhaling floral scents can reduce cortisol levels, the hormone associated with stress. When cortisol decreases, the body feels calmer, and tension in muscles and blood pressure can also drop. Different flowers release various chemical compounds that interact with the brain's nervous system, influencing mood and emotional responses. Scents such as rose, jasmine, or gardenia have been studied for their relaxing properties. Even brief exposure to floral aromas can trigger a sense of comfort and well-being. This effect is not just psychological, it is physiological, altering brain activity and hormone levels. By stimulating olfactory receptors, flowers communicate directly with the brain, creating relaxation and reducing anxiety. It shows that flowers are not only beautiful to look at, but also provide tangible benefits for human health. Their scents act as natural stress relievers, subtly improving mood and mental balance. Lavender, in particular, has measurable calming effects on both the mind and body. Its scent has been tested in hospitals, workplaces, and homes, demonstrating a consistent ability to reduce anxiety and stress. Inhaling lavender can slow breathing and lower heart rate, creating a physical sensation of calm. It affects the limbic system in the brain, the area that controls emotions and memory, producing a soothing effect. Aromatherapy using lavender is used to improve sleep quality, reduce tension, and help with mild depression or nervousness. Even a small amount of lavender oil or fresh lavender flowers can trigger relaxation responses in humans. The effect is immediate, showing how flowers can communicate chemically with our nervous system. Lavender is one example of how plants have evolved compounds that interact with animals, including humans, beyond just reproduction. Experiencing lavender shows that flowers can influence mood, physiology, and mental health, bridging nature and human well-being in subtle but measurable ways. Spending time in floral environments can have surprising effects on the body. Being surrounded by flowers can lower heart rate, reduce stress, and promote a sense of calm. Gardens, parks, or even indoor spaces with abundant flowers create a relaxing sensory environment. The combination of colors, scents, and natural patterns signals the brain that the surroundings are safe and pleasant. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and recovery. People often feel more relaxed, focused, and happier when exposed to floral environments. Studies have measured decreases in heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormone levels in participants spending time around flowers. Flowers provide a multisensory experience that encourages mindfulness, slowing down mental activity and promoting relaxation. This shows that flowers interact with humans on multiple levels, beyond simple beauty. By creating environments rich in floral stimuli, people can experience measurable improvements in physical and mental well-being. Flowers serve as natural tools for stress relief and calm. Looking at flowers also has profound effects on the brain. Visual exposure to flowers activates reward centers in the brain, the same areas involved in pleasure, motivation, and positive emotion. When people see flowers, they often experience joy, satisfaction, or a sense of peace. Bright colors, symmetrical patterns, and gentle shapes contribute to this neural response. Even images of flowers, not just real plants, can trigger similar activation. The effect may be linked to evolutionary biology. Flowers signaled food, resources, and fertile environments to our ancestors, creating a natural attraction. Modern humans still respond to these cues, experiencing pleasure and emotional uplift. Activation of reward centers can improve mood, reduce anxiety, and increase overall feelings of happiness. This shows that flowers are more than decoration. They are stimulants for mental and emotional health. The brain responds instinctively, demonstrating that interaction with flowers creates both psychological and neurological benefits that enhance well-being. Humans instinctively prefer symmetrical flowers, and this preference is rooted in evolution. Symmetry in flowers signals health, genetic stability, and proper development. When petals are evenly arranged, the brain interprets the pattern as orderly and balanced, creating visual pleasure. This response is similar to how people respond to symmetry in faces, buildings, or art. Symmetrical flowers are easier for pollinators to recognize and land on, which may explain why humans are also drawn to them. Even small deviations in symmetry can be noticeable, making perfectly balanced blooms more attractive. This instinctive preference influences gardening, flower selection, and decoration. Across cultures and history, symmetrical flowers have been celebrated in art, design, and rituals. The preference is unconscious but powerful, shaping how people interact with plants. By favoring symmetry, humans are responding to signals that originally evolved to facilitate pollination. Flowers communicate fitness visually, and our brains respond naturally, creating a connection that is both biological and aesthetic. Symmetry turns flowers into universal symbols of beauty. Many medicines humans rely on originally came from flowering plants. For thousands of years, people have studied plants to discover compounds that heal or relieve symptoms. Flowers, leaves, stems, and roots contain chemicals that protect the plant from pests, diseases, or environmental stress. These same compounds often interact with human biology in beneficial ways. Plants were the first source of drugs, long before synthetic chemicals were developed. Herbal remedies, tinctures, and extracts came from flowering plants used in traditional medicine systems worldwide. Modern pharmaceuticals frequently trace their origins back to these natural compounds. Aspirin, morphine, digitalis, and quinine are examples. Even today, researchers study flowers and plants for potential new treatments. The diversity of chemicals in flowers reflects millions of years of evolution, providing a natural pharmacy. This shows that flowers are not only visually and emotionally significant, but also life-saving. By exploring plant biology, humans continue to discover new ways flowers support health and medicine. Morphine, a powerful painkiller, is derived from a flowering plant. It comes specifically from the opium poppy, a plant with beautiful, delicate blooms. The plant produces chemical compounds in its seed pods, which, when processed, become morphine. These compounds originally evolved to protect the plant from herbivores by creating bitter or toxic effects. Humans discovered the analgesic properties of opium thousands of years ago and refined it into medicinal forms like morphine. Today, morphine is widely used in medicine for severe pain relief, surgery, and chronic conditions. Despite its potency, it must be carefully controlled because of the risk of addiction. The story of morphine illustrates the powerful relationship between flowers and human health. What evolved as a defense mechanism in a poppy flower became one of the most important tools in modern medicine. Flowers, through their chemical complexity, provide substances that can profoundly affect the human body and save countless lives. Aspirin's origin also traces back to flowering plants, specifically willow trees and meadowsweet. For centuries, people used the bark and leaves of these plants to relieve pain, fever, and inflammation. The active compound, salicylic acid, was later isolated and refined into modern aspirin. This chemical reduces inflammation, lowers fever, and alleviates pain by interacting with the body's natural pathways. Aspirin has become one of the most widely used medicines worldwide, preventing heart attacks, strokes, and chronic pain. Its story demonstrates how flowering plants have been essential to human health for thousands of years. What began as a natural remedy in flowers and trees evolved into a standardized pharmaceutical with global impact. Flowers and plants continue to inspire medical research, providing compounds that improve quality of life. Their role in medicine highlights that flowers are more than beauty. They are sources of healing, deeply integrated into human survival and advancement. Flower compounds are being studied extensively in cancer research, and they show remarkable potential. Many flowers produce chemicals called secondary metabolites, which evolved to protect the plant from disease, pests, and environmental stress. Scientists have discovered that some of these compounds can slow the growth of cancer cells or even trigger cell death in tumors. For example, compounds from the periwinkle flower are used in medicines that treat leukemia and other cancers. Researchers continue to explore petals, leaves, and stems for molecules that can target cancer pathways safely. These compounds can influence cell signaling, DNA repair, and immune responses. Using natural compounds from flowers allows scientists to discover treatments that may be less toxic than synthetic drugs. Flowers, which evolved to protect themselves, are now helping humans fight deadly diseases. This shows that the natural world contains powerful tools that we are only beginning to understand. Even small, delicate blooms can hold secrets with profound implications for health and survival. Floral scents can also influence memory recall in humans. The olfactory system, responsible for detecting smells, is closely linked to the brain's hippocampus and limbic system, areas associated with memory and emotion. Inhaling the scent of certain flowers, like lavender, rose, or jasmine, can trigger vivid memories or emotions from the past. This effect occurs because smells bypass the rational brain and go directly to regions involved in memory formation. Floral scents are often linked to experiences in gardens, celebrations, or nature, creating powerful associations. Even subtle fragrance in a room can enhance learning, focus, or mood by stimulating the brain. Aromatherapy research shows that flowers can improve cognitive performance and emotional well-being. The connection between scent and memory reveals that flowers interact with humans in ways beyond vision or touch. They communicate chemically, influencing emotions, recollection, and perception. This explains why a single smell can instantly transport someone back to a specific moment or feeling in their life. Flowers appear in every human civilization's art, from ancient carvings to modern paintings. Across the world, from Egyptian hieroglyphs to Indian murals and European tapestries, flowers have been a recurring motif. They are used to represent nature, beauty, fertility, and spirituality. Artists have always noticed the diversity of shapes, colors, and patterns, which provide endless inspiration. Flowers in art also serve symbolic purposes, conveying messages about life, death, love, or seasons. The consistent presence of flowers across cultures shows their universal importance to humans. Even in decorative designs, pottery, architecture, and textiles, floral imagery communicates aesthetic pleasure and cultural meaning. Flowers are easy to recognize and highly versatile in artistic expression. They bridge the gap between reality and symbolism, allowing artists to explore both natural beauty and deeper human ideas. This enduring role in art highlights the special relationship between humans and flowers. Their forms, colors, and cycles have inspired creative expression for thousands of years, making flowers central to cultural and artistic heritage. Different cultures assign symbolic meanings to flowers, creating a rich language of petals and colors. For example, red roses often symbolize love in Western societies, while white lilies may represent purity or remembrance. In Japan, cherry blossoms convey the fleeting nature of life, reflecting philosophical and spiritual ideas. In China, peonies symbolize prosperity and honor, while marigolds in Mexico are linked to remembrance during the Day of the Dead. Cultural associations may vary widely, but they all show how humans interpret flowers as messages, signs, or symbols. Symbolic meanings can influence rituals, ceremonies, art, and personal expression, connecting people to natural cycles and emotions. These interpretations are passed down through generations, becoming embedded in tradition and social practices. The symbolism of flowers demonstrates that plants are not just biological entities, but also powerful communicators in human society. Across time and geography, flowers carry meaning beyond their appearance, linking culture, emotion, and identity in ways that continue to shape human understanding and interaction with nature. In Japan, flower viewing, known as hanami, is more than just looking at blooms. It is a deeply rooted national tradition. Each spring, people gather under cherry blossom trees to celebrate the fleeting beauty of flowers. Families, friends, and coworkers picnic beneath the blossoms, enjoying the scenery, sharing food, and appreciating the moment. The tradition emphasizes mindfulness, reflection, and the passage of time, as cherry blossoms bloom for only a short period. Hanami is not only cultural but also social, encouraging connection with nature and with others. The practice dates back centuries, with poetry, paintings, and festivals celebrating cherry trees. Observing the flowers also fosters awareness of seasonal change and the delicate balance of life. This ritual shows how flowers influence human behavior, emotions, and community traditions. The act of pausing to admire blooms connects people to nature's cycles, teaching patience, appreciation, and reflection. Through Hanami, flowers become symbols of beauty, temporality, and shared human experience, demonstrating that plants are deeply intertwined with culture and daily life. Ancient Egyptians also valued flowers, using them to decorate tombs and sacred spaces. Flowers were placed in burial chambers to honor the dead and provide spiritual protection. They believed that the beauty, fragrance, and symbolism of flowers could help guide the deceased into the afterlife. Lotus blossoms, in particular, were highly significant, representing creation, rebirth, and the sun. Flowers were often depicted in wall paintings, carvings, and hieroglyphs, emphasizing their importance in religious and cultural practices. The act of decorating tombs with flowers was both an offering and a way to ensure balance and harmony for the soul. Beyond aesthetics, flowers held spiritual meaning, linking life and death in the Egyptian worldview. Their use in burial rituals shows that flowers were more than decoration. They were integral to human understanding of existence and the divine. Ancient practices illustrate that humans have long recognized flowers as symbols of life, beauty, and continuity. These traditions continue to influence art and culture today. In Victorian society, flowers were used to send coded messages, a practice known as florography. People carefully selected blooms to express feelings that could not be spoken aloud in polite society. Each flower, its color, and arrangement conveyed a specific meaning: love, rejection, admiration, or secret affection. For example, red roses symbolized love, while yellow roses might represent friendship or jealousy. Small bouquets, called tussie-musses, carried these messages discreetly at social gatherings. This system allowed individuals to communicate emotions in a socially acceptable way, turning flowers into a complex language of symbols. The practice required knowledge of the codes and an understanding of subtlety and nuance. Florography demonstrates that flowers were not only admired for their beauty, but also valued as tools for communication and social expression. The Victorian use of flowers reflects the intersection of culture, emotion, and natural beauty. By assigning specific meanings to blooms, humans transformed plants into a living, symbolic vocabulary that conveyed messages beyond words. Some flowers have come to symbolize peace worldwide, transcending cultures and borders. White flowers, such as lilies, doves, or poppies, often represent harmony, remembrance, and reconciliation. They are used in ceremonies, monuments, and international events to honor victims of conflict and promote understanding. The symbolic power of flowers lies in their visual simplicity and gentle presence, which contrasts with aggression or violence. Peaceful symbolism also arises from the natural cycle of life and renewal, reflecting hope for the future. Flowers are chosen because they can communicate emotion and intention without language, creating a universal message that everyone can understand. This symbolic use demonstrates how plants extend their influence beyond biology into human values and ethics. By representing peace, flowers become tools for reflection, empathy, and connection. Across cultures, nations, and religions, certain blooms carry the same message: calm, unity, and reconciliation. In this way, flowers continue to shape human experience, expressing ideals that words alone may struggle to convey. Other flowers have been associated with mourning and remembrance across cultures. Dark or muted blooms, such as chrysanthemums, lilies, and black roses, are often used in funerals and memorials. They symbolize grief, respect, and the passage from life to death. Using flowers in mourning helps people express emotions that are difficult to put into words. The act of giving, arranging, or placing flowers can provide comfort to the bereaved, creating a tangible connection to memory and loss. In many traditions, flowers are believed to honor the soul of the deceased and ease the transition into the afterlife. This practice spans continents and centuries, showing the universal human response to grief through natural symbols. Even in modern society, mourning flowers play a role in rituals, memorials, and ceremonies. Flowers transform intangible feelings into visible expressions, bridging the gap between emotion and communication. They provide solace, reflection, and continuity, demonstrating that even in sorrow, the natural beauty of blooms can offer quiet support and understanding. Floral patterns are universally calming, and design studies have repeatedly confirmed this effect. Humans respond positively to the shapes, symmetry, and colors of flowers in visual environments. Curved lines, repeating petal patterns, and soft colors evoke relaxation, reduce stress, and create a sense of order. Interior designers, architects, and graphic artists often incorporate floral motifs into homes, workplaces, and public spaces to make environments more comfortable and inviting. Even abstract floral patterns, not real flowers, can lower tension and improve focus. The calming effect is thought to originate from evolutionary psychology, as flowers historically indicated safe and resource-rich environments. Repeated exposure to these shapes activates areas of the brain associated with pleasure and relaxation. Studies show that people in spaces with floral patterns feel happier and more at ease. Flowers, therefore, influence human psychology not only through direct interaction, but also through representation. Their forms provide an accessible, natural pathway to reduce stress and encourage mental well-being. Hospitals and medical settings have long used flowers to improve patient mood and recovery. Placing fresh blooms in patient rooms or waiting areas creates a sensory environment that engages sight, smell, and sometimes touch. Research has shown that patients surrounded by flowers report lower anxiety, less pain, and increased overall satisfaction. Flowers can also encourage social interaction, conversation, and a sense of normalcy in clinical spaces. Even small arrangements have measurable effects on emotional well-being. The presence of flowers in medical environments reminds patients of life outside the hospital, nature, and beauty. Staff also report feeling calmer and more positive in spaces with flowers. By enhancing mood and mental state, flowers indirectly contribute to healing, supporting both psychological and physiological recovery. This practice highlights how flowers extend their benefits beyond gardens, homes, and art, actively influencing human health. Their presence in hospitals demonstrates that flowers are therapeutic tools, enhancing well-being through both aesthetics and sensory engagement. Even digital images of flowers can influence human emotions, showing that the calming power of blooms is not limited to physical presence. Studies indicate that viewing photos or videos of flowers reduces stress, lowers heart rate, and improves mood. Colors, symmetry, and shapes communicate signals to the brain that are associated with relaxation and pleasure. Virtual flowers can create microenvironments of calm, even in offices, classrooms, or homes where real plants may not be practical. Digital representations also allow repeated exposure, enabling individuals to benefit from flowers at any time. Interactive media, screensavers, and online floral imagery harness this effect, demonstrating that the human brain responds instinctively to flower patterns and colors. The visual and psychological impact works even without scent or touch. Digital flowers highlight that the connection between humans and flowers is deeply rooted in perception. Through images alone, flowers continue to influence mental state, emotional balance, and overall well-being, proving their effects are versatile and enduring. Some flowers only release their scent after sunset, using night as a signal to attract specific pollinators. During the day, these flowers remain quiet and inconspicuous, conserving energy and protecting delicate structures from heat and sunlight. As darkness falls, they release powerful fragrances that travel through the cooler night air. These scents are often stronger and more concentrated than daytime flowers, ensuring they can reach insects or animals that are active at night. By timing their fragrance, flowers increase the chances of successful pollination while minimizing waste of resources. Night-scented flowers often rely on moths, bats, or other nocturnal creatures to transfer pollen. Their petals are usually pale or white, making them easier to see in low light. This adaptation demonstrates the precision with which flowers interact with their environment. Timing scent release with the activity of pollinators shows a sophisticated level of biological coordination. Flowers are not passive. They actively manage energy, visibility, and chemical communication to ensure reproduction and survival. Moths, in particular, rely heavily on pale, night-blooming flowers for food and reproduction. These insects are most active after sunset and have evolved to detect subtle fragrances and shapes in low light. Flowers that bloom at night often have white or pale petals that reflect moonlight, making them easier for moths to locate. The long tubular shapes of many night-blooming flowers are perfectly suited to moths' long proboscises, allowing them to feed efficiently while picking up and depositing pollen. This mutual relationship benefits both species. Flowers are pollinated, and moths obtain food. Moths also help flowers reproduce over larger distances, as they travel farther at night than daytime insects might. This interaction demonstrates the complexity of ecological relationships. Night-blooming flowers and moths evolve together, each shaping the behavior and adaptations of the other. The reliance on nocturnal pollinators shows how flowers use timing, scent, and structure to communicate effectively with the right species. Moonlight can influence flowering cycles, affecting when certain plants open or close their blooms. Some flowers sense subtle changes in light intensity and duration, using moonlight as a cue for timing activities. This is especially important for night-blooming species, which need to coordinate with the schedules of nocturnal pollinators. Flowers may open when the moon is bright, increasing visibility to insects and bats, or close during new moon periods to conserve energy. Light-sensitive cells in petals or stems detect these changes and trigger chemical and structural responses that control blooming. By responding to lunar cycles, flowers can optimize reproduction, survival, and energy efficiency. This adaptation shows that flowers are finely tuned to their environment, perceiving not only daily sunlight but also nighttime illumination. Moonlight-guided cycles illustrate the intricate ways plants interact with natural rhythms, demonstrating a surprising level of environmental awareness. Even subtle cues like lunar brightness can influence essential behaviors like flowering and pollination. Certain tropical flowers bloom for only one night, creating a brief window for reproduction. These flowers invest energy in producing large, showy blooms and intense fragrances that attract pollinators quickly. Because the bloom lasts just a single night, timing is critical. The flower must attract nocturnal pollinators such as moths or bats immediately. This strategy minimizes energy expenditure by concentrating resources into one event rather than maintaining flowers for days. After the bloom, petals often wilt or fall, leaving seeds to develop for the next generation. These short-lived flowers rely on precise environmental cues, such as temperature, humidity, and light, to know when to open. The fleeting nature of the bloom makes the event highly efficient and evolutionary advantageous. One-night blooms also reduce the risk of predation or damage from weather. This adaptation shows how flowers can evolve extreme specialization, synchronizing biology, chemistry, and environmental sensing to maximize reproductive success in a very narrow time frame. Some flowers glow faintly under ultraviolet (UV) light, creating patterns invisible to the human eye but highly visible to many insects. Bees, butterflies, and certain other pollinators can see UV light, which allows them to detect hidden guides on petals that lead directly to nectar and pollen. These glowing patterns often form stripes, dots, or contrasting shapes that efficiently direct pollinators, increasing the chances of successful reproduction. To humans, the flowers may look plain or uniform, but under UV light, they reveal an entirely different world of signals and designs. This adaptation shows how flowers communicate visually with species that perceive the world differently than we do. It also demonstrates the intricate coevolution between plants and their pollinators, with flowers developing structures that precisely match the sensory abilities of their visitors. The ability to glow in UV is not just aesthetic but functional, guiding essential interactions. Flowers actively shape their reproductive success through invisible cues, creating a hidden layer of natural communication. Night-pollinated flowers are usually white or pale, a trait that helps them stand out in low-light conditions. These pale colors reflect even small amounts of moonlight or starlight, making the flowers easier for nocturnal pollinators, such as moths and bats, to locate. Bright colors, which are visible in daylight, would be ineffective at night, so evolutionary pressure favors muted, reflective petals instead. Night-blooming flowers often produce strong scents to further attract pollinators, combining visual and chemical cues. Their shapes are frequently tubular or open, accommodating the feeding behavior of nocturnal insects and animals. By appearing pale in dim environments, flowers maximize visibility while conserving energy on pigmentation that would not be useful at night. This adaptation shows how flowers modify appearance to match environmental conditions and the sensory needs of their pollinators. The combination of color, scent, and shape ensures effective reproduction even in darkness, highlighting the precision of natural selection in shaping plant survival strategies. A few flowers can slightly warm themselves at night, a remarkable adaptation that supports pollination and reproduction. These flowers generate small amounts of heat through chemical reactions or metabolic processes, raising the temperature around their reproductive organs. The warmth helps protect pollen from cold nighttime air and can make the flower more attractive to pollinators seeking a comfortable microclimate. For nocturnal insects or small animals, the subtle heat may act as a signal, drawing them toward the flower. This temperature regulation allows flowers to remain functional in cooler environments where reproductive success might otherwise be limited. The ability to self-heat is energy-intensive, so it is usually reserved for specialized species that rely on night pollination or face extreme conditions. This demonstrates the lengths to which flowers can adapt, using both chemical and physical mechanisms to optimize reproduction. Even small temperature changes can influence pollinator behavior, showing how finely tuned flowers are to their environment and visitors. Temperature also affects how far floral scent travels, influencing the range at which pollinators can detect flowers. Warmer air helps scent molecules move more quickly and disperse over greater distances, while cooler temperatures slow their diffusion. On hot days, floral fragrances can reach insects and birds far from the plant, maximizing the chances of pollination. Conversely, cold nights or shaded environments may limit scent travel, so flowers often compensate with stronger fragrances or larger blooms to attract nearby pollinators. Humidity and wind interact with temperature, further shaping how scents spread. By releasing scent strategically, flowers communicate their presence to the right pollinators efficiently. Timing scent release with temperature fluctuations ensures energy is not wasted, and pollination success is optimized. This dynamic shows that flowers are highly responsive to environmental factors, combining chemistry, biology, and physics to improve reproductive outcomes. Even a seemingly simple fragrance is the result of complex interactions with air, heat, and ecology, highlighting flowers' sophisticated environmental awareness. Humidity increases scent intensity in flowers, creating a more powerful signal for pollinators. When air contains more moisture, scent molecules move differently and cling to the surrounding atmosphere longer, making the fragrance easier to detect. Flowers in humid environments often release stronger or more concentrated aromas to maximize their chances of attracting insects, birds, or other pollinators. Tropical and rainforest flowers rely heavily on this effect, as dense vegetation can make visibility difficult, so scent becomes the primary way to communicate. The combination of humidity, temperature, and airflow shapes how far and how quickly floral scents travel. Pollinators, which can detect even faint signals, respond to these cues to locate nectar efficiently. Flowers adapt their chemical output to match environmental conditions, ensuring reproductive success. This interaction shows that even the moisture in the air plays a role in pollination. Flowers are sensitive to subtle changes in their surroundings, and they exploit these factors to communicate effectively. Humidity becomes a natural amplifier for floral fragrance. Night air allows scent molecules to linger longer, which is critical for nocturnal flowers. Cooler nighttime temperatures reduce the movement of air and slow down the dispersal of fragrance molecules, meaning the scent hangs near the flower for extended periods. This creates a dense, concentrated aroma that nocturnal pollinators, like moths and bats, can easily detect even from a distance. Many night-blooming flowers have evolved to take advantage of this effect, releasing fragrance only after sunset to synchronize with the activity of these pollinators. The lingering scent increases the chances of successful pollination while conserving the plant's energy, as it does not need to release chemicals constantly. By adapting to natural nightly conditions, flowers optimize their reproductive strategy. The interaction between air temperature, time of day, and scent diffusion highlights the precision of floral evolution. Night air essentially acts as a carrier, allowing flowers to communicate chemically with the right pollinators, creating a carefully tuned nighttime ecosystem. Around 90% of flowering plants rely on pollinators, making these interactions vital for the continuation of plant species. Flowers have evolved colors, shapes, scents, and nectar specifically to attract insects, birds, bats, and other animals that carry pollen from one bloom to another. Without pollinators, reproduction for most plants would be slow, inefficient, or impossible. This dependence explains why coevolution has occurred, with both flowers and pollinators developing traits that benefit each other. Bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and even some small mammals act as essential agents of fertilization. Flowers signal their availability through timing, color, and scent, while pollinators seek food or mating opportunities. The mutual relationship ensures that plants can produce seeds and fruit, which in turn feed a larger ecosystem. Even a small decline in pollinator populations can threaten entire plant communities. This statistic demonstrates that flowering plants are not independent. Their survival is deeply connected to animal behavior. Pollination is not optional. It is a critical ecological partnership for most of life on Earth. Over 75% of human food crops depend on flowers for reproduction, showing the direct link between flowering plants and global food supply. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds all originate from flowers that have been pollinated successfully. Without pollinators transferring pollen, crops like apples, tomatoes, almonds, and blueberries would produce little or no food. Farmers often rely on managed bees, wild insects, or other pollinators to ensure high yields and healthy harvests. The health of flowering plants directly affects human nutrition, economy, and survival. Loss of pollinators or disruptions in flowering cycles can have serious consequences for food security worldwide. Flowers are therefore not just ornamental, they are essential components of agriculture. Their biology, timing, and ecological relationships determine how effectively crops can reproduce and produce edible yields. Understanding this dependency highlights the interconnectedness of humans, plants, and animals. By protecting flowers and pollinators, humans safeguard the food systems that rely on these natural, intricate interactions. Flowers are, literally, the foundation of much of the world's food supply. Without flowers, fruit would not exist, because flowers are the starting point for all fruit development. When a flower is pollinated, pollen fertilizes the ovule, and the ovary begins to develop into a fruit. The petals, sepals, and other flower structures often wither as the fruit forms, leaving behind the seeds inside. This process ensures that the seeds are protected and dispersed effectively, either by animals, wind, or water. From apples and oranges to berries and melons, every edible fruit we eat originates from a flower. Without flowering plants, many ecosystems would collapse, as fruit provides essential nutrition for animals and humans alike. Even fruits used in cooking, snacks, or beverages all depend on successful flower pollination. Flowers are therefore critical to the survival of countless species, linking reproduction, food chains, and biodiversity. They transform their beauty and fragrance into a source of sustenance. Observing a fruit reminds us that it was once a delicate bloom, shaped to attract pollinators and create life. Chocolate depends on a tiny flower pollinator, which is essential for the cacao tree to produce seeds. The cacao tree produces small, pale flowers directly on its trunk and branches, and these flowers are incredibly difficult to pollinate. Tiny midges, a type of insect, are responsible for transferring pollen between blooms, a process that allows the tree to form cacao pods. Without these pollinators, many flowers fail to produce seeds, and chocolate production would drop significantly. Cacao flowers are fragile, and pollination requires precise timing and insect behavior. Farmers often try to increase pollination manually because natural insect populations can be unreliable. This tiny flower and its specialized pollinator highlights how human food depends on delicate ecological relationships. Chocolate, a treat enjoyed worldwide, would not exist without this intricate interaction. The story of cacao flowers demonstrates that even the smallest blooms and insects can have a massive impact on global culture, economy, and human enjoyment, linking nature directly to daily life in surprising ways. Coffee begins with a white, fragrant flower, which appears before the coffee cherries develop. These blooms are small but intensely aromatic, releasing scent that attracts bees and other pollinators. The flowers grow in clusters along branches and typically last only a few days, during which pollination must occur for cherries to form. Once pollinated, the flowers fall, and the fertilized ovary swells into the coffee cherry, eventually producing seeds, the coffee beans. The timing, fragrance, and arrangement of flowers are critical for high-quality coffee production, influencing crop yield and flavor. Coffee farms often monitor flowering cycles carefully to optimize pollination and harvest. This demonstrates that even globally important crops rely on the biology of flowers and their interaction with pollinators. From a delicate white bloom emerges the coffee that fuels millions of mornings. Understanding this link reminds us that flowers are essential to human culture, agriculture, and daily life, turning ephemeral blossoms into a global commodity. Cotton comes from flowering plants, showing how industrial and agricultural systems rely on blooms for raw materials. The cotton plant produces flowers that vary in color, often starting as white or yellow, and then turning pink or red as they age. Pollination of these flowers allows the ovary to develop into a cotton boll, which contains the fluffy fibers humans harvest for textiles. Without successful flowering and pollination, cotton fibers would not form, and the plant could not produce usable material. These flowers are adapted to attract insects, ensuring that each bloom contributes to the next generation of plants and fibers. Farmers monitor flowering stages to predict harvest times and maximize yield. Cotton demonstrates that flowers are essential not only for food, but also for clothing and industry. The connection between blooms and human products highlights the multifunctional importance of flowers. What begins as a delicate floral structure transforms into fibers that clothe millions, proving the hidden influence of flowers in everyday life. The oxygen cycle is indirectly supported by flowering plants, playing a vital role in sustaining life on Earth. Flowers are part of plants that perform photosynthesis, a process where carbon dioxide and sunlight are converted into sugars for energy, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. While leaves are the main site of photosynthesis, flowers contribute by producing tissues and structures that support growth and reproduction, ensuring the plant thrives and continues generating oxygen. By attracting pollinators, flowers help plants reproduce, which maintains plant populations that continue photosynthesis year after year. Forests, meadows, and gardens filled with flowering plants collectively produce massive amounts of oxygen that humans and animals rely on for survival. Without flowers supporting plant reproduction, many species would decline, reducing the overall oxygen output. This demonstrates that even the delicate, often overlooked parts of plants contribute to large-scale ecological processes. Flowers are more than decoration. They are active participants in life-sustaining cycles, silently supporting the air we breathe and the balance of ecosystems worldwide. Grass, including essential crops like wheat and rice, is technically a flowering plant, even if we rarely notice its blooms. Grasses produce small, often inconspicuous flowers called florets, which are adapted for wind pollination rather than attracting insects. These tiny flowers are highly efficient, allowing grasses to produce seeds in large quantities, feeding humans and animals globally. Wheat, rice, corn, and other grains rely on their flowers to produce seeds that become staple foods. Despite their simplicity and lack of bright petals or scents, grass flowers are incredibly important for agriculture and ecosystems. They demonstrate that not all flowering plants need showy blooms to succeed. Function and efficiency are equally critical. The flowers ensure the survival of the species, sustain the global food supply, and indirectly support human civilization. Observing a wheat field in bloom may seem ordinary, but each tiny flower plays a crucial role in feeding billions. Even subtle, hidden blooms maintain life on a massive scale. Every apple begins as a flower, showing the direct link between blooms and the fruits we eat. Apple trees produce clusters of blossoms, often white or pink, that attract bees and other pollinators. When a flower is successfully pollinated, its ovary begins to swell and develop into an apple, while petals fall away. Each flower contains the potential for a seed inside the fruit, ensuring reproduction of the tree. Gardeners and farmers carefully monitor blooming periods to maximize pollination and fruit quality. Without flowers, apples would not exist, as they are the product of the plant's reproductive process. This connection demonstrates how essential flowers are to both natural ecosystems and human food production. Even a simple snack like an apple represents countless interactions between flowers, pollinators, and environmental conditions. Flowers transform from delicate, short-lived blooms into nutritious, edible fruit, bridging reproduction, survival, and human consumption. The apple is a testament to the quiet power of flowers to sustain life and human culture. At this moment, somewhere on Earth, millions of flowers are quietly opening, continuing a cycle that has been unfolding for over 100 million years. Each bloom represents the ongoing story of evolution, adaptation, and survival, with petals, scents, and nectar designed to attract the right pollinators. Across deserts, forests, mountains, and oceans, flowers signal the presence of life, maintaining ecosystems and food chains. Pollinators move from bloom to bloom, seeds are formed, fruits develop, and new generations of plants are prepared to repeat the cycle. Despite their fragility, flowers have persisted through dramatic changes in climate, continents shifting, and species rising and falling. Their continuous presence underlines the resilience of nature and the intricate interdependence between plants, animals, and humans. Every blooming flower contributes to oxygen production, pollinator sustenance, and biodiversity. Even tiny or unnoticed blooms play a critical role in these processes. In this moment, the planet is alive with flowers opening and closing, silently sustaining life, beauty, and balance, carrying forward a story that began long before humans ever existed.